And time for this week's Capitol Report with Pat McGuigan of CapitolBeatOK.com. Pat, last week we talked about your top 5 local stories, Oklahoma City stories of the year. So this week we go over the top 5 stories in the area where you really have the greatest expertise, and that's in state government. So,
yeah, this will be a little bit wonkish perhaps, and maybe that's all right. We'll start with the bottom 3.
Yeah, start with 5, 4, 3.
Yeah, have a little fun like late night. Anyway, in 5th, I would put the changes at the education department, for good or ill. You know, controversy comes with change, and Janet Barresi is a change agent. What's intriguing is that at times she's managed to make both sides applaud, both sides of the political spectrum and people in the middle, and at other times she's had boos from each side of the political spectrum. Maybe that's a sign she's doing the right thing. Maybe it's a sign that she's not politically deft. I don't know. I do know the appointment of Joel Robison, high-ranking official with the OEA, as her chief of staff was a real jolt to some of her conservative supporters, but maybe it'll be turn out to be like a couple of Ronald Reagan's hires. We'll find out, because a couple of his hires jolted his supporters and turned out to be some of his best people. So I don't know what the future will bring on that, but that is a big story, and I rank it 5th. It's just the whole change that's going on in education. In 4th, I'd put the effort by David Dank and other Republicans to bring about reform in the way business incentives and tax credits are structured in Oklahoma. Had a long season of hearings, some of the most thorough and comprehensive investigation of issues that I've seen in state government. It was serious. It again drew bipartisan involvement, which is a little unusual, and agreement on a lot of the parameters. And then groups that didn't testify, the 3 leading chambers, the state chamber, Oklahoma City chamber, and the Tulsa chamber, came out against really the key provisions that Dank has laid out that would be a way to, some people say, improve those programs and bring some money back into the Treasury that could then be used for either tax cuts or for services. So that's a big story. I rate it 4th. 3rd, the possible phase out of the income tax. We've talked about it twice, so I won't dwell on it, but the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs idea, whether it's a phase down or a phase out of the state income tax that finally gets considered in the legislature. Big issue, historic in its parameters, even though it hasn't happened yet.
Okay, 5, 4, 3. Number 2.
Number 2, some people would rank 1st, and that is the Oklahoma economy. We did rank it 1st for Oklahoma City. The economy as a whole is remarkably robust, especially in comparison to the rest of the country. That doesn't mean that some people aren't being left out and aren't capturing the dynamism that's going on right now, but one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country, some of the strongest economic growth rates in sectors even other than energy, but of course energy is driving a lot of the investment and the growth. So that's a big story, and I rate it number 2.
All right. So, and I know what your top story is, even because we've talked about it so many times, but with a little drum roll, what is the number 1 story of the year in state government?
Well, you know, some people would have nominated Republican control of government, but if you look at it through a policy prism rather than a partisan prism, which despite my own conservative-leaning views, I try to do. What's the most substantive thing that happened in Oklahoma government in the past year? I think the most dramatic long-term, because it addresses both past problems, present challenges, and builds the basis for a better future, is pension reform. You captured 25 to 35% of the unfunded liability in a major slice of Oklahoma state government. And in the end, it even wound up being bipartisan, although it was definitely driven by the Republicans. So give them a check mark for following through on the logic of their own views, and give the Democrats a check mark for agreeing with it. A big reform, and I predict a lot of positive outcome over the years ahead.
Well, the great thing is we know that there are other stories that were big, and you can read more about those stories at CapitolBeatOK.com. We don't have time to get into them,
Weather,
but there are
weather would have been good.
Randy Terrell, a lot of other things that were in the 6 to 10 range. You can read about it at CapitolBeatOK.com. For Pat McGuigan, I'm Alex Cameron. Have a good
Happy
week.
New Year.
Happy New Year. We'll see you next time.